any one of you, what do you relate to? All right. So let me begin with the same, and let me introduce you to who an entrepreneur is. So entrepreneur is basically one individual who starts up a company or an organization or a business. Now, when we talk about this word business, uh, this business or the scale of business could be either on a small scale, on a medium scale, or on a large scale. But nevertheless, of the fact that the business is being run on a very large scale or a medium scale or a small scale, the matter of fact which is important is that a person has taken an initiative to start something new, to begin something new. So there are certain factors which are very important to be taken into context when a person thinks of being an entrepreneur. So when a particular person wants to become an entrepreneur, he needs to have a thought process of being creative and innovative. That is the most important thing. These words creativity and innovation are used multiple times when we talk about creativity. There is a bit of difference between creativity and innovation. Creativity is when you emerge with some new ideas. जब आप कुछ नया सोचते हैं, जब आपके माइंड में कोई नया आइडिया आता है, तो हम उसको बोलते हैं creativity. And when we talk about the word innovation, we are talking about the application of that creative idea. मैंने सोचा है कि मुझे सर्विस इंडस्ट्री में कोई नई सर्विस इंट्रोड्यूस करनी है, लेकिन जब तक मैं उसको इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं कर रही हूं, तब तक आई एम नॉट बीइंग इनोवेटिव. तो एंटरप्रेन्योर बनने के लिए जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट या सबसे इफेक्टिव क्वालिटी किसी इंडिविजुअल के अंदर होना आवश्यक होता है, जरूरी होता है, इंपॉर्टेंट होता है, दैट इज हैविंग दैट क्रिएटिविटी, बट हैविंग दोज गट्स, हैविंग दैट इनिशिएटिव टेकिंग एबिलिटी, जिससे आप उस क्रिएटिविटी को इनोवेशन में कन्वर्ट कर सकें. इनोवेशन में कन्वर्ट करने का मतलब क्या है? यहाँ पर वी आर गोइंग टू प्रैक्टिकली implement that particular idea. Okay, so if I am thinking about starting a new business, so I should not just think about implementing that idea, I should actually implement that idea by arranging certain funds from certain sources. Okay, then looking for the physical resources or the infrastructure. जिस इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में मुझे काम करना है, मुझे अपने ह्यूमन रिसोर्सेज को वहां पर अक्यूमुलेट करना होगा और मुझे अपने बिजनेस सेटअप को एस्टैब्लिश करना होगा. सो दिस इज व्हाट इनोवेशन मीन्स. अब
Ma'am, am I audible?
एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप.
Excuse me, ma'am.
हेलो.
Excuse me. Ma'am, am I audible?
या यू आर.
Ma'am, I request you to just communicate in English alone because we have the participants from different states, so they'll not be able to understand Hindi. So
All
I
right,
request
ma'am.
you to
I'll be. I thought, ma'am,
convey the
that there
same.
may be certain people who may be, interested in listening in Hindi. Now I'll be going in totally English. No problem,
Thank
ma'am.
you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Right. Okay. So as I was talking to you all about entrepreneur, first, before going into a deeper meaning of entrepreneurship, we were talking about the word entrepreneur. So I was talking about the fact that an entrepreneur is a person who initiates a business idea or who thinks of becoming a business owner or a businessman. So that person needs to have two important things basically with him. One is creativity and the other is innovation. And I was telling to you about the basic difference between creativity and innovation. There are several people, there may be thousands of people who may be creative enough in the sense that they may have many new ideas to implement or to develop or to implement. But out of those thousands or lakhs of people who are having those new ideas, there may be only few people who take up an initiative of, executing that idea. So innovation is basically execution of the idea which you have in your mind. So when you are thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, when you are thinking of starting and running a new business, the most important factor is to be creative and then to be innovative as well. Being creative means initiating or bringing into your thought process a new idea. And innovation is the application of that idea. Okay, so the basic meaning of being an entrepreneur is that you are starting and running up a business. Now, when you're becoming an entrepreneur, you need to have three important elements into the concern. One, the number one is focus. Second, the funding. And the third one is the decisions which you are going to take. Let's discuss about the first factor, that is focus. An entrepreneur needs to be very focused. By focusing here, I mean that he should not divert himself from the vision which he has in his mind. You know, when you start up a particular business, there are certain important aspects which you need to take into consideration. First is the vision, second is the mission, then you come with the goals, then you have objectives, and then you have those long term, medium term, and short term plans with which you move ahead. Okay, so the first thing while you are becoming an entrepreneur is you should have a vision. What do you mean by having a vision? By having a vision, you mean that where do you see yourself after a point of time? Like if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm nothing right now. I have certain amount of capital or funds which I want to invest in a particular kind of a business. But right now I am a simple person who is just initiating a business. But I see myself to be a business leader after 10 years. Or I want to see myself as a, leader in dealing with a particular or a certain category of products or services after a certain period of time. Say, for example, 25 years or 20 years or 15 years of time. So this is my vision, that where I see myself when I am putting certain efforts into a certain business. So this is what vision means. After vision comes the mission. In order to achieve or to where whatever you have visualized, where you are seeing yourself after a particular point of time, you should have an ultimate goal or a mission, that nevertheless whatever happens, how you're going to continue in order to achieve. So whatever you have dreamt of, whatever vision you have created for yourself, in order to achieve that one particular vision, what whole soul goal you are going to make, that is going to be your mission. Okay. After mission, you have certain objectives. Now, objectives may be those targets, where what you want to achieve. Like, for example, short-term objectives could be for a span of time of, say, a year. Then you have the medium-term objectives, like, for example, 3 to 5 years is going to be the time span within which you want to achieve the targets. And then you have your long-term objectives, which you want to achieve in a time span of, say, 10 to 15 years. So, basically, these long-term objectives are those which help you to go ahead with your vision, like where you see yourself after a period of time. So as you can see in the PPT, that the first element which I have mentioned is focus, which means that an entrepreneur should never divert himself from the vision and the goals which he has kept for himself. So whenever he is making a particular kind of decision, he needs to make very sure that he is not diverting from his goals. He is not diverting himself from the objectives which he has kept for himself. Okay, so if I'm thinking, or if I've made a vision that I want to become a market leader, say for example, after 10 years, then every single decision of mine should lead me, should contribute to the achievement of that objective of becoming a market leader after a particular span of time. So these are my goals, which are leading me to a certain result. Now, another element which I've mentioned here is the decisions. Okay. Now, what are decisions? Decisions are when you are thinking of different kinds of alternatives and you are thinking of different pros and cons, and then you are trying to achieve a particular decision. So, every single decision which an entrepreneur makes is going to determine his or her success journey in the process. Therefore, this element decision has been specifically mentioned, that an entrepreneur needs to be a very good decision maker. He should be able to assess and evaluate all the necessary factors which are important to know, to assess, or to identify how they are going to contribute towards the अचीवमेंट ऑफ द गोल्स. यानी यदि मैं आज डिसीजन ले रही हूं कि मुझे अपने बिजनेस को एक्सपैंड करना है, डाइवर्सिफाई करना है, एंड आई एम ओपनिंग अप टू से फॉर एग्जांपल अ न्यू प्रोडक्ट और अ सर्विस, so whether that is going to contribute towards me leading to becoming a market leader, yes, it is definitely going to. Until and unless I expand my business, until and unless I diversify my business, how will I think of growth? How will I think of success? How will I think of becoming a market leader? So, this basically implies that whatever decision I am going to take, that should ultimately lead me to achieve my goals or my ultimate vision and mission. Third important factor, as you can see here, is funding. What do you mean by funding? When you are accumulating funds from various sources, until and unless you are a very powerful or a very well-to-do person who is having sufficient amount of capital in hand with yourself, you need to fund yourself from investors and other sources. Now basically when you fund yourself from different sources, you are going to basically make use of equity funds or your debt funds, which are very important for you to fund your business. Equity, when you are inviting the people to invest in the shares of the company. Then you have debt capital when you take loans in the form of debentures or any other form of loan capital. So you need to make a good capital structure for your company where you are having a good proportion of debt and equity. Okay, that is where you are taking up or funding your business by way of loans from any financial institution or a bank, or you are raising funds by way of debt capital or debenture capital. Then you have equity funds wherein you are sharing the ownership of the business with certain number of people who are called the owners of the business, the equity capital basically. So whatever funding you are going to make, you have to make sure that the risk factor has to be balanced. Now comes the very, very important element of entrepreneurship, and that is risk factor. What do you mean by risk? Risk basically means that, for example, if I am not able to get a feasible amount of return on the investment I'm going to make, what will happen? I'm going to go in a situation of loss. So this is a big risk for me, that maybe I'm going to be successful, maybe I'm going to be unsuccessful. So there's going to be a lot of unpredictability because business always runs in an unpredictable environment, an environment which you can never be sure of. You might have been a business tycoon for a very long period of time, but suddenly you may find that you are not doing well into the business, or in a particular sector you may not be doing well. So there is going to be a huge amount of risk, and this risk factor keeps on fluctuating with the passage of time. Maybe you have a great deal of competitors. Maybe a competitor is doing very well. Maybe he's having a very good quality product or a service which may be able to gain a competitive edge over you, because of which your success rate or success ratio might go down. So what you need to do here is you need to assess and analyze the amount of risk you are ready to take right now. And that is important when you are taking this funding decision. आप जितनी ज्यादा फंडिंग, the more the amount of funding you are going to make into the business, the more is going to be the level of risk. If I'm investing 10 lakh rupees, the magnitude of risk is going to be comparatively lower. Whereas if I'm thinking about investing crores of rupees into my business, definitely the level of risk which I am going to owe for my business is going to be very, very high. So whether I am mentally prepared, whether I am having those solid decisions, whether I have taken up a very good idea, and whether I have made myself sure of the fact that if I'm funding certain amount of money into my business, I'll be successful in a particular point of time is very, very important. So it is very important that when you are taking a funding decision, you have to take up an investment ratio from the debt and equity capital in such a manner that you are able to balance your risk and cost. Because every single unit of money which you are going to fund into your business is going to involve a cost, which you have to pay irrespective of the fact you earn profits or not, irrespective of the fact that your business goes well or not. You have to pay back to the people from whom you have taken the money. It's basically the stakeholders of your business. So when you have taken certain amount of funds from somebody, you have to return it. They are not concerned with the fact whether you are doing well or not. If you are doing well, very good. But if you are not able to do, then also you are definitely going to face that risk. You are definitely going to face that risk that if I'm not able to do well, or if I'm going to suffer the loss, how I am going to combat with that. So what can an entrepreneur do over here? He can make a team of good people. Okay, if you want to run a business on a large scale, what you have to do is you have to make a team of those people who are equally enthusiastic, who are equally motivated, and who are equally willing to invest their time, their money, or their efforts for the well-being of your business. Then you come to the next factor, and that is entrepreneurship. So what is entrepreneurship now? So entrepreneurship is basically this particular process of focusing, identifying your vision, identifying your goals, taking up the major decisions in the business, financial decisions, marketing decisions, HR decisions. By HR here, I mean the human resource decisions and so on. So you may take several decisions for the same. And then last, not the least, the most important one, and that is the funding decision, because your risk factor is going to be directly correlated with the magnitude of funds you want to invest in your business. So it is very important for you to take it into consideration that your focus is well built up, it is well developed, you are focused every time, and whenever you are taking any decision for your business, how much it is taking you closer to your vision, to your mission, to your goals. Then funding decision is again very important, as I was telling you, that the level of risk which you are capable of bearing or which you are willing to take is a very significant factor. Okay, so these are certain factors. So entrepreneurship is basically the process of focusing, making decisions, and funding the business. So these three factors which I have mentioned earlier are those factors which are taken into consideration in the process of being a good entrepreneur. And this is going to be an everyday process. It's always going to be an everyday process. You need to improvise your decisions every day. You need to think of something better every day to gain an edge over your competitors, to do better over your competitors. So it's very important for you to take these factors into consideration. Ma'am, can I have the next slide, please? Okay. So now we move on to the next very important factor, and that is startup. So what is a startup basically? Startup is when you are introducing or when you are in the early stages of development of a company. जब आप अपने बिजनेस को स्टार्ट करते हो, इनिशिएट करते हो, तो आप उसको स्टार्टअप बोलते हो. सिंपली स्टेटिंग, when you are initiating or introducing your business, or you are a baby company basically, when you are into the early stages of establishment of your company, you call it as a startup. So there are certain founder members in the business who provide the funding in the business, or they, maybe there are certain group of people who are going to become an entrepreneurial team, and they are going to look for the investors. Now, getting funds for your business is a very challenging task. Challenging because when you are into a startup or when you are into a new business, people would resist coming into investing their money into such business. Again, the same thing comes into being, that whenever you are investing, even if as an individual I am investing my funds, my money into something, I am taking certain amount of risk. All right, so when I am thinking about investment as an investor, I need to be convinced about the fact that every single penny which I am going to invest into your business, I'm going to get feasible returns out of it. Because there are so many business, there are so many companies, there are so many investment opportunities which are available to the investors. So you have to convince your investors as to why they should join your business, or why they should invest your funds into the business, invest their funds into your business. That is very important. So the founder members are the ones who are going to get certain investors, or the people who can sponsor your business. So sponsorship basically here means that people who are going to take up an initiative of investing money or funds into your business. Now, when you are establishing a startup, or when you are establishing a particular business, you need to assess and evaluate, most importantly, the market demand of your product or a service. Estimation is very important. Predictability is very important. Forecasting is very important. Now, when you are making those those mission or those goals or the plans of your business, forecasting comes into being. Forecasting means what? Forecasting means predicting, making predictions, that if I'm investing certain amount of money into my business, what I'm going to get, whether I'm going to fetch a certain amount of demand for my product or not. So you have to forecast, you have to predict, and then you have to plan out things which are able to lead you or bring you closer towards your goals. So whatever business you want to invest in, you need to first estimate or predict the demand of the product or service in which you want to get into. So either you can get into a business or an industry or a setup which has not been established. Like, for example, companies like Zomato and Swiggy, they were revolutionary into the service industry. Why? Because they were thinking of introducing a service or a product, a particular service which was not yet being introduced to anybody anytime. If we talk about a company like Paytm, which has now become the need of time for every individual person like us, the general public. So you have to come up with an idea or a product or a service for which you will be able to fetch demand. If the owner of Swiggy or Zomato might have thought that there is no demand for the product, they wouldn't demand of their service, they wouldn't have even, initiated or taken up a decision of launching their business. But yes, they thought that there is no particular service sector right now working towards providing a doorstep delivery of food to the consumers or to the customers. So they took an initiative and they started a particular business. So what they would have done earlier, they would have definitely estimated a market demand. After which they took a decision of entering into a particular service industry like theirs. Similarly, we go for products. What you do is first you try to see who your competitors are, what are their market segments. We are going to talk about segmentation in the coming slides as well. But right now, we need to know that you try to identify your target markets first. What are your target markets? Target markets are basically those market areas where you are going to target with your product. Every single marketplace is not going to be a place where you're going to find your customers. Maybe some places you will, maybe some places you may not. So first you have to identify or determine your target markets. And after determining your target markets, you have to see whether you will be able to fetch or get certain amount of demand for your commodity or not. So, when you are beginning with manufacturing a particular product, you do not manufacture a commodity on a very large scale. What you go for is you go for test marketing first. What is test marketing? You first initiate the sale of a few bundles or samples of product. You try to take reviews from your customers, and then you try to identify by way of customer feedback that whether your product will be able to fetch a certain amount of demand or not. So basically, in order to fetch that particular market demand, you need to identify a target market first. Then you need to introduce your product over there, and you need to know whether you are able to get a reasonable amount of demand for your product, your commodity or not. So based on the market demand only, your investors are going to invest. So in the initial stages, what is going to happen is you as an entrepreneur is going to estimate or identify that market demand. Okay, and you are going to convince your investors that you will be able to create a proportionate level of demand for your commodity or your services, and you are ought to be you're going to be successful definitely. And after that, you are going to fund your business. Then what is the goal here? What is the basic initiative here? To grow your business into a bigger initiative. And the moment or from the time when your startup begins to expand or diversify or grow or become successful, you get converted or transformed from being a startup to a company. Okay, so in the initial stages, what you are a startup, you are a baby company. But once you are able to trigger that growth, that development for yourself, you are able to create that market demand, you are able to create substantial number of customers for yourself in the market, then you become a company. So this is basically the difference between a company and a startup. Startup is basically an a company only, but which is at its early stages of development. But once you grow, once you develop, once you start prospering, then you become a company for yourself. Ma'am, can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So now we're going to talk about the different types of startups. What are the different types of startups which people think of or which they can go for? Okay. Now, talking about the first category or type of startup which has been mentioned or given here is the scalable startup. Now, when the word scalable is mentioned over here, we are basically talking about the scale of business which you are going to get in with. So here, whenever an entrepreneur perceives about starting a business, he is talking about or identifying a business on a larger scale only. He's not starting up a business of getting into any kind of business opportunity on a small scale. He always wants to go in for beginning up with a business or going in with a business on a larger scale. So the first and foremost characteristic of a scalable startup is it is based on an innovative idea. Now this innovation is not just something which is going to be only for a scalable startup. It is going to be something which is applicable to any kind of startup, whether you are starting a smart business startup or a lifestyle startup. For any kind of business or a startup which you want to initiate, you need to be creative. You need to have something different. uh, the simple reason is that whenever a particular customer who is a brand loyal to a particular product is going to ask you, when if you are coming with a new product, he's going to ask you that why should I buy your product, or why should I choose you over the others? So you should have that USP in your product which differentiates your product from the others. Now I've used a new word here. What is that? USP. So what do you mean by the word USP out here? So USP here means unique selling proposition. Unique selling proposition is that unique quality or element of your business which differentiates your business to some other kind of business. So that USP should always exist in your business. And how does that USP come into being? That USP comes on the basis of innovation. You should have that innovative idea which creates that USP into your commodity. As you can see here in the slide, I have mentioned about the companies like Zomato and Swiggy. What was their USP? What was their unique selling proposition? They were able to enter into an area or into a service industry which was never thought of by anybody else. They thought about bringing the food services to every customer at their doorstep. And so people preferred it. It was an innovative idea. And that was their USP, which worked on for them. And at that time, when Zomato and Swiggy were thinking about beginning their own startup, their basic aim or their basic objective was not, into going for a target market or only in an area like, say, for example, Bhopal. Though they began with their business from the metropolitan cities, which was further then gradually introduced to the other cities or the other towns which were comparatively smaller in terms of creation of demand. But at least when they started their business, the scale of business with which they initiated was comparatively large. So the basic difference between a scalable startup and the other kinds of startup is that the scale of business which they think of is comparatively larger. So what basically differentiates here is the level of risk which they are willing to take. So they are willing to take a very high level of risk, and with that they want to enter into an industry. Second very important characteristic you can see here is that there is no break even concept. I hope a few of you might be knowing about break even concept. Break even is a concept wherein an entrepreneur first enters into a position of no profit no loss situation. That is, whatever you have invested, you get the same amount of revenue out of the sale which you are going to have from your business. And over and above the break even, what you get is the amount of profit. So that break even concept is not the focus of the entrepreneurs here or the startups here. Their basic motive is creating the best user value. What do you mean by best user value? That whenever a customer or a consumer is making use of your services, he should have that idea of fact in the mind that he is making use of or availing the best services which he or she is not going to get anywhere else. So if you are able to create that factor in the mind of your consumer, you have become halfway successful. And then technology is used basically for creating this best user value. Just be whatever technology you're going to make use of, that is going to be made use of in order to create the best kind of user value. Another example we can take here is of companies like Amazon and Flipkart. They have made use of the artificial intelligence or the management information system and the technology out there in order to reach their customers. No one knows who is the owner of Amazon. I have not personally visited or met the producer or manufacturer of a certain company, but then I have been a brand loyal or a user of services or the products which have been sold by Amazon, isn't it? So what they are making use of, they are making use of AI, that is artificial intelligence or the technology, in order to make an outreach or a wide reach among the customers. So this is what scalable startups are all about. Next, we'll move on to smart business startups. Now, smart business startups are those which are self-funded. Here, what you do is you are not willing to take a very huge level of risk up. You are not, going in for, taking up an investment or funding from any external sources. You just want to start your business yourself. You want to fund it only yourself with whatever limited amount of capital you have, and the basic motive here is that you want to minimize the level of risk. So when you are not willing to take a risk on a very large scale, you self fund your business and you are making a smart business startup. Then your focus here or inclination here is to sustain the business. The reason here is that the investment level is low. When the investment level is low, definitely the kind of infrastructure which you are going to have is also going to be comparatively lower. So your basic motive is sustain or survive in a competitive business environment. So whether you will be able to do that or not, you have to think about that. So basically those local business organizations which you usually find people working on a smaller scale, though they may be going on a very large scale, but initially when they self fund their business and then when they go for exaggerating or expanding their business and converting it into a scalable startup will be a different story. But initially they do not want to go on a very large scale. Next is lifestyle startups. Now, the best examples of lifestyle startups are painting, banking. Nowadays, you have, many areas like clothing and apparel brands. You will find that people who are, very good dress designers or very good artists or very creative people, they may go for lifestyle startups wherein they try to pursue their own interest areas because they are very well versed in that area, so they create their own brand name. They create those patents or copyrights for themselves, and creating that name for themselves would then definitely lead them to creating a name for themselves. I could name one of the brands today right now which is working very well, and that is Manish Malhotra. He was basically a fashion designer who was making or designing the clothes for the celebrities. He was a very well known name, but now he has a brand or he has a product industry for himself, built up for himself. So these are the examples of lifestyle startups which are basically initiated or started or initiated in order to create a different name for themselves. They maintain their individuality, and by way of that creative vision of their own, by way of that creative aura which they create for themselves, they are able to be successful. Initially they are a startup, and then definitely they build up into a very large scale company, as we have examples for us today. Next slide please. All right, now we come to how to build up a startup. Okay, what should you do? For example, if you are thinking of building up a company, you are not just going to build up a company in a day or in a month's time or in a 6 months time. You definitely are going to take step by step, one step ahead every time in order to reach your ultimate vision or goal. Remember, being focused is going to be one quality which an entrepreneur has to be always sure of. Her every single decision which an entrepreneur is going to take, he is going to take it into consideration that how closer it is going to bring him towards the vision and mission which he has created for himself. So if it is doing so, then his decision is successful enough. So let's see what are those factors which have to be taken into consideration. First is defining your business idea. You know, a well defined idea is something which brings a clarity to your thought process. So you can see here that under this particular point I have given two important or major decisions which an entrepreneur takes here. One is identifying the problem, and second is determining the target market. This is what I was talking to you about, the target market. Identifying the problem. What do you mean by identifying the problem here? Problem may be in the form of those hurdles which may be coming before you are even thinking of starting up a business. Like, for example, one basic problem would be the cutthroat competition which might be available or which might be there in an area which you want to enter into. Or maybe because you are funding your business on a very large scale, if you are going for a scalable startup, the problem would be how to invest the money into certain segments or factors so that you are able to fetch any amount of market demand. So there are n number of challenges when you are starting your business on the initial level. So you have to identify the problems or the hurdles or the barriers so that you can know about their solutions. And then determining the target markets. As I was telling to you earlier, every market, every market area cannot be your target market, especially when you are thinking about a startup. Every market cannot be your target market. Only certain specific areas where you are expecting certain amount of market demand will be your target market. So इसीलिए that is why you need to determine or define or gain a clarity about what are going to be your target markets when you are a startup. Remember, we are talking about a startup here. We are not talking about a large scale company here. So you have to determine the target markets. So you have to gain a clarity about how you can bring that business idea into form. Again, moving back to what I was talking to you about earlier, that is creativity and innovation, that you are having an idea. Now you are thinking of executing or implementing that idea, and that is very important to be thought of. Second important factor is conducting the market research. Now, market research is basically a process wherein you are actually trying to conduct a research or identifying or getting information about the market areas in which you are going to supply or offer your product. So this particular market research can be in any form. It can be in the form of consumer research. It can be in the form of advertising research. It can be in the form of competition research. So you basically need to know about the needs and preferences of the people. You know what? We have a term in economics where we say that a satisfied need can never work as a motivator for an individual to buy a product. Like, if I have already bought a product, I would not buy it until and unless I have a demand for it again. So either you have to create that demand for a consumer for a new product, or you should see what is that hidden factor or that unsatisfied demand, or what is that preference of a consumer which the current products have not been able to satisfy till now, and which you can offer into your product which could satisfy the demand of your consumer. Take a very simple example, like shampoos and conditioners were a product or a brand which used to exist, but then people came up with serums and those lotions and those products into that cosmetic area, into that area, with which now people find that in order to enrich the quality of their hair, they can make use of serums. So you need to know that how you are going to create that demand, or what is that demand which has not been satisfied till date, which you can satisfy by way of your particular product or a commodity or a service. So in order to know the needs and preferences, you need to conduct market research. Another very important thing is the competitive landscape. The target market or the area where you are going to serve your product is going to be different in different areas. Like, for example, in a particular target market or an area, the level of competition or the level of demand of your commodity or product may be very high. The competition level might be very high, but there may be certain areas where the competition level may be meager, and you can even offer the products with a low level of competition, and you might be more successful. So the competitive landscape of the area or the target market in which you are going to serve your customers is very, very important. So you need to conduct that research in field of advertising or consumer research or product research or service research or whatsoever you want to do as such. Next one is registering your business. Registering your business basically is going to happen by way of registering yourself with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, or you have to obtain a business license, and there are different formalities and permits which you need to take if you want to enter into a particular product or a service area in order to sell your commodity or product. So your basic motive here would be to take or obtain a permission from a particular source or a particular person concerned or a particular organization. Just a minute, please. So as we were talking about the third factor, that is registering your business. So you have to fulfill all those formalities which are important for you to get registered in a particular segment or a product area or a service area where you want to get into. Then is securing the funding. For funding part, we have talked about a lot, and we have discussed about a lot earlier also, that you have to go for different kinds of investors and you have to convince them as to why they should invest their funds or their money into your business, or how you will be able to secure their funds into the business. You will be able to realize that cost and give them some feasible returns or good returns on their products or commodity, on their investments which have been made by them or not, is very, very important. So by way of venture capitalists, by way of angel investors or crowdfunding, these are some of the factors. These are some of the ways in which you can fund your business. And then as I was telling to you about the making of an apt proportion of the equity and debt capital is very, very important. That you have to decide over how much amount of equity capital you want to keep for yourself, how much amount of debt capital you want to take up, so that you can balance the risk or you can minimize the risk, and you can maximize the revenue or the benefits, is very, very important. Next and very important factor is building a team. When we talk about building a team, we are talking about identifying those skills and dedicated professionals who are going to be as much enthusiastic, as much motivated, and as much devoted as you are in order to build up that business, who have the same vision and mission in order to exaggerate or expand the business as you have for yourself. you know it is always said that it is the human resources who have that capability to convert the idle resources into ideal resources. Ideal means which is not active, ideal is the best ones. So human resources or the team which you have plays a very, very important role in converting the idle resources of yours into ideal resources. You have several kinds of resources. You have material resources, you have financial resources, you have infrastructure, you have decision making, you have various factors, but it is actually the people who have to work out on them. So it is very, very important or mandatory that you have to build up a team of efficient and effective people, the people who will be able to minimize the cost and maximize the level of returns. So it is very important that you build up a team of good people. Next is launch and grow. So you have to now launch your business, and you have to always keep on having that mindset. You have to keep on manifesting that I will be able to survive. I will be able to sustain even if I am going to have a very, great deal of competition, or I am going to have a cutthroat competition. So for that, what you're going to do is you have to build a good customer base, and that is not going to happen overnight for you. In order to build that customer base, you have to work on it. You have to have those efforts. What can be the efforts over there? You have to go for vigorous advertising, sales promotion of your commodity from whatsoever means you can do, distribution of free samples, advertising your products by hoardings, billboards, signboards, advertising your products and services on television, distributing brochures, or any particular way by way of which you can market your product. You can popularize your product. You can publicize your product or commodity, because people need to know. You need to educate your customers about whatever you are willing to offer them, whatever you are willing to sell them. So that is why you need to build up your business, your customer base by way of marketing activities. There are n number of marketing means, we can talk about it. It's a very interesting topic in itself, that what could be those marketing tools which would help you as an entrepreneur to grow and develop. So what does that basically imply? That an entrepreneur needs to have a very good marketing know-how as well. He needs to have an awareness about those marketing tools which are going to work out for him, for his business, for his products, for his services. For example, for somebody, an online marketing base would be very successful. But for certain products like household products, if you are dealing in household product or commodity, maybe television advertising is going to work very well for you. Further, if you want to go for building up a product, or you want to go for a product for, youngsters, maybe hoardings or glow sign boards or radio advertising could be a very good means of publicizing or marketing your product. So you have to work out on that. So these are basically those factors which you have to work on. Ma'am, can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so now what you actually do in order to start your business, or how you actually start your business, there are certain points which we have actually discussed upon earlier also. So we are not going into a very, very innate detail about the same. Let's go through them, that how you want to, or how you will be actually executing that decision of building up that startup. So it starts with idea generation and validation. So yes, since you are an entrepreneur, and as I talked to you about that earlier also, that if you're an entrepreneur, the basic quality or that genuine quality which you definitely need to have is generating that idea, or having that idea which differentiates you or your idea from that of others. So idea generation is very important, and validation. You might have many ideas, but you need to validate by way of market research that whether it is feasible to launch that particular idea at the moment or not, whether you will find a suitable market for your product in the concerned target markets which you have thought of or not, is very, very important. Second is business planning. So you need to develop and draft a business plan. Now, business plan comprises of everything: how you are going to fund your business, what is going to be the infrastructure, who are going to be the number of people who are going to work in your business organization, when you are thinking of tentatively manufacturing your product, conducting a test marketing on the same, finally launching your product, and so on. So a detailed business plan is very, very important. And then financial projections and marketing and sales strategy need to be prepared here. You need to make those action plans to make your vision and mission workable. So you need to plan about it. Next is resource acquisition. Resources may be of any kind. It may be a material resource, it can be a financial resource, or any kind of resource which is enabling you to create that product or a service, or rather to say, creating a demand for your product or service. So there may be various resources which you need to arrange for, and the most important one which you need to arrange for here is going to be your financial resources. Then next is going to be product or service development. So product or service development basically considers one very important factor, and that is prototyping. You can see here that prototyping is the word which is mentioned here. So what do you mean by prototype over here? Prototype basically means a small version, or a sample version of the product you actually want to create. Then you conduct a test marketing on that product, and then after the people have actually identified, or they are satisfied with that product, you can go for developing or manufacturing that product on a very large scale, and then you can sell the product in all those target markets which you have, or which you might have decided earlier. So prototyping is basically creating a blueprint, or developing a blueprint of that product or commodity which has been created. Uske upar you are going to conduct a test marketing, and if the consumers prefer that product, or if you get a positive feedback from your customers, you are going to create some larger versions, or you are going to manufacture that product on a very large scale, and then you are going to offer and launch that product among your customers or consumers. Next slide, please, ma'am. Next is marketing and sales. Now, to attract the customers, first of all, and then to retain those customers, you need to market them and sell them. Marketing and selling are two different terms. Marketing is when you are informing the consumers about the product, and selling is when you are actually making efforts to transfer the product or commodity towards your customers. So for that, you need to do two very important things. One is to make the marketing strategy, and second is to create a sales strategy. Here we are not talking about the plan, actually we are talking about the strategy. What do you mean by a strategy? Strategy basically means an action plan. Planning is a thought process. Strategy is basically the execution of that plan. So what I can practically implement is what I have to think about. I am thinking of advertising my product on various platforms. But if I am having limited financial resources, can I even go for it? No. So with those limited funds which you are having in your hand, how you can market your product in the best possible way in order to attract the customers and retain. What do you mean by retaining? Sustaining those customers. It is very, very important. You may create customer demand for one time, but you will be able to retain that demand only and only when you have a good quality product, when you are able to create that USP for your product, that unique selling proposition for that product. If you are able to create that USP for your product, you have won half the battle. So, whenever you are developing that marketing and sales strategy, you have to make that mindset that you are able to communicate to people what is that USP in your product or commodity which differentiates your product or commodity from that of your competitors. Or when a customer comes up with a question that why should I buy your product, why should I take up a decision of preferring your product over the others, you have an answer for them, that I have that USP in my commodity or a product which any other product does not have, so I should come up with that. And then operations and growth, this is very, very important. Consistency is the key to everything. So you have built up a customer base and you have to focus on retaining it every day, every single day. But even with that consistency, growth comes along. Growth is where you are seeking for all those possibilities of expanding or diversifying with the passage of time. As I was giving you an example about Swiggy and Zomato also, that they were the companies who had initiated or started their business in the metro cities in the earlier stages of their establishment or their startup building, but gradually they moved on to all these cities. And now we can see that we have that demand of food delivery being fulfilled by Swiggy and Zomato, no matter in which city we are living. So you have to maintain that consistency, but at the same time, you have to think about those growth opportunities. And you know what? You have to track it continuously. That what is the right time? You have to target that growth component. And that is not something which you can achieve in a year or in 2 years. With the passage of time, when you gain an experience, when you have a customer base, when you have certain brand lawyers for your commodity, you can think about growth prospects. So that is again a very important factor. So consistency and then growth again are very, very important. Can I have the next slide, please, ma'am? Now, what are those things which you need to consider in order to be successful or become a successful entrepreneur? Or if I may not be wrong, that it would be very right to say that how you can convert your startup into a company. So there are certain factors for it which I will be taking into consideration. Just give me a minute's time, please, ma'am. If you can excuse me for us for a few seconds. Hello, everyone. So the factors which you have to consider while you are launching a startup, but as I was saying, that not just launching a startup, even transforming a startup into a large scale company, what are those factors which you have to take into consideration? So the first one is that business idea must be clear and unique. So the factor which I was talking to you about, that is USP, or creating a unique selling proposition for your product, so that you need to create by way of your business idea. Second is a thorough marketing research. Thorough marketing research is you need to you need to do your homework very well before you enter into a market area. So market research is that homework which you need to do very well. That homework implies conducting research about whatsoever field you want to collect information about. Research, in very simple words, basically means accumulating any and every information you need to know in order to solve your problem. Whether it is product research, service research, customer research, or sales research, marketing research, advertising research, sales promotion research. There are n number of areas in which you can conduct the research, and it's up to you how you need to decide over it. Then determination of funding the needs and exploring the options. So as I told you, that you have to strike a right debt equity mix so that you are not able to increase the risk beyond a substantial level. Specifically, when you are talking about launching a particular startup, it is very very important that you need to explore only those options which are able to balance your risk with the cost factor. Only then you can go for it. Then making a detailed business plan is very important, because you are not going to work individually, you are going to work with your team. So you need to have a detailed business plan. Registering your business or running a legal business is again very important consideration, because you won't be able to sustain without that for a very long time. Location of the business is very important, because you have to serve a target market, or you have to serve various target markets which may be scattered over a very long area or a very large area. So what can be the right location? Team of skilled professionals is very very important. You need to have creative team. You need to have a team which is going to have a technical know-how with you. So you need to know the demand of people as well. What kind of professionals you actually need to have, what kind of skills you want the people to have in themselves in order to work for you or fulfill your expectations is very very important. Then performing marketing and sales operations is very very important. So we have talked about those marketing and sales strategies which you need to take into consideration. Then streamlining the business operations. What do you mean by streamlining here? You need to make this fact very clear in your mind, that you need to divert the attention of every single effort you are making towards the achievement of those goals, those objectives, that mission or that vision you have created for yourself. That's very important. So every single business operation or activity which you are going to take up, you have to streamline them, and you have to divert them or focus them only towards the achievement of that mission, that vision which you have created for yourself. And then management of finances and preparing that budget, wherein you make certain estimations and then you are able to be there in those limitations, and executing your activities accordingly is very very important. Next slide please, ma'am. Now, funding of startups can be done by various forms. The first one is the personal savings. So, in order to cover the initial expenses when you are thinking of break even, or if you are having a smart business startup, which we were talking about, you can invest your capital if you have a good amount of capital with you. And you can go for market research and you can develop the product on a comparatively smaller scale. Next one is angel investors. So, when you are asking for ownership stake in a company, and you are taking up those investors in your business who can give their valuable expertise also, they are called as angel investors. Basically the equity investors are whom we are talking about. Then venture capital firms are very popular nowadays. These are those capital agencies or firms which demand for ownership. Okay. And you are offering them ownership, and in return for that they are investing their funds in the business. These are the firms which are very very focused on funding more and more on the startups, and good startups which have that capability or potential in them to be able to sustain and survive in a competitive environment and gain an edge over everything. Next one is crowdfunding. Now when you are raising small amount of funds from many many platforms, okay, small funding from various funding agencies, it is known as crowdfunding. Online platforms can be used for the same. Next one is bank loans. It's a very common form of loan which the people have been taking right from ages. So we don't need to go into a greater detail. I think all of us know about it. Collateral securities. Against those collateral securities, you can get a huge amount of fund from the people. Then you have grants, which are provided by the government and non-profit organizations, and which may be available for certain specific industries. They are not available for every industry. Nowadays, you will find that many government schemes are running in order to promote the entrepreneurs, especially the women entrepreneurs, to move ahead with their entrepreneurial ideas and come ahead with the same. So this is how the funding of startups can be done. Ma'am, can I have the next slide, please? Now, these are the examples of various startups, successful startups. Flipkart, an e-commerce company. See how long way it has come. It was founded in 2007 and it was designed to deal in a retail goods business. But the scale and magnitude of business which Flipkart is running right now, it's a very good example of how these startups have now converted itself into a large scale company. Then you have Zomato, which I was talking to you about earlier, also a food delivery platform, which was founded in the year 2008 and which has a very huge network of restaurants and variety of cuisines working up right now. Airbnb, currently running very, very trendy platform, I can say right now. It's a home sharing platform which was founded in the year 2008 and very surprising and very happy to know. I think all of us would be very happy to know that it has 7 million listings around 7 million countries right now. So you can imagine the rate of success which this particular startup has been able to create over a passage of time. Next one is Slack. Slack is basically a team communication and collaboration platform which offers a variety of features. You can go through it, you can Google it around, and you can know about this startup in a greater detail. Paytm is no surprise or no ignorance for anybody right now. Founded in 2010, now it is on every single phone, every single corner of the country, if we talk about it right now. So a digital payment financial service company which is has been able to create that, monopolistic competition. I must say, not say monopoly, but monopolistic competition it has created, and it has been able to work upon it for so long. So it's a very, very good example. Ola, a ride hailing company which was founded in the year 2010 and which has a large network of drivers and a wide range of vehicle options. We all use it over. So again, it is something which we all have been aware of, and see how these startups have been able to create a big name, fame, and that fame game they have been able to run up so well, and they have been able to develop themselves into so successful entrepreneurial businesses. So this is how a startup can develop into a large scale company. This is what entrepreneurial development is all about. How you can grow, prosper as a startup, and create yourself, create a name for yourself, and you can build up into a large scale company. So these are those good, very good examples of how you can create successful startups for yourself. Next, please, ma'am. So I've already told you a lot about the same. There are many online tutoring platforms which have been examples of good startups. Eco-friendly products provide करने वाले कई सारे आपको मिलेंगे. Health and wellness apps are there. Virtual event planning apps are there in order to give you an idea about how you can go for planning and event management. And then subscription box services which offers a wide range of curated products on regular products, organic beauty products, and so on. Next slide, please, ma'am. So this is what I have to say about entrepreneurship, these startups, and thanks to you all for a very patient listening. So if you have any queries, any questions, you all are most welcome for the same.